Hi, I'm David, and I've been a chess player for 30 years of tournaments at this point, and beyond that, spent a lot of my time studying chess and teaching chess and talking about chess and so on. And lately I've been doing some reflection, and I wanted to share that with you. When I was young, it was really common that people were trying to justify chess. Why chess? Why is chess a good activity for kids or for people, etc.? And they were trying to push to get chess into schools. I think this was economically driven. It was where the chess economy was at that time, was the opportunities outside of being a top 20 professional player were basically teaching. And so the chess economy was largely pushing chess into school programs. That was where the growth was, and that was the impetus for it. And you see things change over time in response to the economic structures of their times, of course. But that was a big question. People were always asking, and they always wanted to get quotes from experienced chess players about how it had helped them and so forth. And so I've spent 30 years reflecting on this question myself. And today I want to share with you the best things that I've gotten out of chess in my life. And specifically, I want to focus on two things that I think are really chess specific. I mean, perhaps to my own happiness, the greatest thing that I got out of a life of chess was a bunch of friends. And even more than that, from traveling the world to get to meet and befriend people from all kinds of different countries and cultures. But that is not necessary, even if that's maybe the greatest thing to my happiness, that is not something super specific to chess. Like, I could have been really big into baking or competitive lamb shearing, and I'm sure I could have gone around the world talking to other bakers, not bankers, and lamb shearers, and created connections and made friends around a shared passion, just as I did with chess. So I think that's something you can gain from many activities that you're passionate about. Is there a way for you to immediately connect with someone who may have very, very different life and culture than you otherwise, and find common ground, and then share beyond that. And that's where you really gain a lot. But instead, I'm going to talk about two things. First, I'm going to talk about the greatest thing that I think that one gains from a life of chess, and that is the capacity for self-analysis, and to the extent that that self-analysis becomes better and better and more accurate, self-awareness. In chess, this is kind of done mostly in a two-step process. First, you analyze the games you play. So you play some games, but then you look at the game afterwards and you reflect on what the different options were, why you made the choices you made, if those were the best choices, or what the alternative choices were, and what your decision-making process is like, and where you tend to make, and where you made some bad mistakes or made some good decisions. Then there's a second step. You now take all these games you've played over your life, dozens, hundreds, in some people's cases, thousands of games. And you can look over the breadth of all these games that you've already analyzed individually, and you can see the patterns of yourself. The patterns of, this is how I tend to make mistakes. This is where I tend to do better. This is where I've been learning. This is something I've gotten worse at. This is something where I lack confidence, but actually I'm doing it fine. This is something where I'm overconfident, etc. And that is the essential activity of chess study that has been the most valuable to me in my life. It's allowed me, as I see these patterns, to understand myself as a chess player, and from that to then diagnose and make changes, and then we can do the same thing in our life just as we can do in our chess life, right? So first of all, in chess, you're pretty much forced to do this, which you're not necessarily forced to do in other areas of your life. In many areas of your life, you don't have a certainty about whether you're doing something well or not. You may not know whether people like you or not, because they may say one thing to you to your face and another thing to other people about you, so you may not even know how your colleagues feel you're performing in your job, or how friends think you're doing as a friend, or things like that, right? You often won't get that direct feedback. In chess, we've got our rating system, we've got our wins, our losses, the results of the games, and then we get hundreds and thousands of iterations to compile data, so it's not just an anecdote or a happenstance, something with a lot of emotional force that grabs you, right? Because there's a general thing in life and in chess that one particular event that has a strong emotional pull may bias your sense of things, right? So if you don't really do an analysis of yourself, you might think, I'm good at making friends or I'm bad at making friends. And it might just be because of one event that really stuck with you. And the same thing with chess, if you don't really do the analysis. There are chess players who think I'm a great tactical player, but a poor positional player. Or I'm a great endgame player, but I just can't get out of the opening in an acceptable position. And they might be wrong. And it might be, just a couple games that made a really strong impact on them. But when you look at hundreds or more games, the picture becomes very clear thanks to the iterations and the data that you get if you do an analysis of it. And for the most part, I think to become a strong and high-level chess player and to make progress after you've hit a plateau, and most people hit plateaus at various points in their chess play, to make progress, most people will be pushed or forced even to analyze their games, analyze themselves, figure out their weaknesses, and then work on repairing those weaknesses. This is not necessarily the case in other parts of your life. You could suffer because of a weakness for a long time and not even really be forced to confront or identify it in many cases. And sometimes you do. And of course, there's a huge industry of self-help material out there and lots of probably fantastic systems and people doing great work to improve themselves all the time. But I think that chess is definitely, in chess, you're more forced to do that, and then it trains you to do that for any other part of your life. So that I think is like the greatest thing that it's brought to me. And also specifically with that progression, there's the part where you diagnose the problems and then you come up with a plan to change it. You study your missing knowledge or you practice your missing skill. You adjust your thinking if it's just an attitude or mindset thing. You adjust your decision-making process. And all these methods by which you change and adapt as a chess player are things you can then pull over. And so for me, it's always been natural that if I want to change something in my life, I just adapt what I've done in chess. I set a goal. I make it incremental. I make it attainable so I can do it little by little over time, turn it into a habit, be serious and rigorous about it, track it, measure it, etc. And that was learned from chess. And let me just throw in a little quote that I love from chess about this idea of you being forced to figure things out in chess where you're not really in life, even though you probably already agree with me or understand this point, and you may already know this quote, but here's a quote that I really love that applies, so I'm going to read it over here. It's from Emanuel Lasker, the second official world champion after Wilhelm Steinitz, and he wrote or said, supposedly, this is 100 years ago, so it may or may not be accurate, "On the chessboard, lies and hypocrisy do not live long. The creative combination lays bare the presumption of a lie. The merciless fact culminating in the checkmate contradicts the hypocrite." So whatever wrong ideas you have, they're getting corrected all the time by your opponent checkmating you. I like that. In life, you can often self-deceive yourself around things. And I do think that, I've said this is like the greatest skill that I've gained for my life from chess, but I've also said that in some ways in life, you can sometimes get away with not knowing yourself. There are areas where you can get by, you can, rise to the top without being the best at something, unlike in chess where, if you're going to be rated over 2,700, it's because you're the best at chess. It's not because you sweet talked yourself or worked your connections or something like that, got a sweet job offer from a friend or an uncle. But although you can maybe get away with not knowing yourself, not analyzing yourself in many areas of life, I still highly recommend knowing yourself. I think it's fantastic. I think that's the greatest thing we get from chess. I want to talk about one other thing, which is attention span, focus, or patience. These are all a little bit in the same ballpark, right? But the basic time control for a chess game when I was young was 6 hours for a game. Now I think the basic time control is probably around 4.5 to 5 hours, which is still a good chunk of time for many people. And if you go back, a couple decades before me, people used to have time controls of 7 or 8 hours and even like adjournments they would have to go home, study the position for another few hours, and then return to the board and play a couple more hours to finish the end game. So compared to a lot of human activities, these are pretty big chunks of time, right? If we're talking 4, 5, 6 hours of doing one activity, and often for those who don't know, that activity is conducted in complete silence, complete immobility, and complete focus. Okay, some people fidget, some people walk up and down excitedly. Some people have to run and tell their friend, "You should see what I'm doing," and they just can't contain themselves. That's now, with the advent of cheating, you're not really... I think people aren't talking to each other as much during tournaments as they used to, but there used to be people who just couldn't wait to tell other people what a great game they'd played, even before they'd finished playing that game. But for the most part, it's an activity that looks kind of like and sounds like that, for hours. So it's a great activity for cultivating your focus and your patience in general and lengthening your attention span. I, throughout my life, have never had a problem with being distracted. If I want to do something, I can immediately block out all other distractions. And I don't even fully understand when other people talk about, like, I want to do this in quiet, or do you need me to take this conversation to another room so you can figure out this puzzle you're thinking about? I'm like, I don't know if you're in the room or not once I'm working on the puzzle. So I can drop in and out of a monotasking focus mode at the drop of a pin or hat or whatever the expression is in a moment, right? At a moment's notice, I can just drop in to that focus and block everything out. That doesn't apply to every single activity. I don't want to misrepresent things. Like, I struggle sometimes to have certain conversations if there's a bunch of other noise in the room. That's a hearing, processing, whatever kind of thing. But any task where I just need to think about it in my head, I can then turn off the listening, and it doesn't matter how much other noise there is around. I can just think about it. And I think that's probably a pretty cool skill to have. I think there are a lot of problems out there that we need more long-form thought to solve. And I do believe also that the way I'm seeing the world, and I know I sound prematurely like a crotchety old anti-technology person, but I do think in the direction things are going that it's going to be harder and harder for people to maintain, develop, and have really good attention spans. Because a lot of people are checking notifications on their phone all the time. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. If there's something you're interested in on the other side of the world, a war or an earthquake or a darts tournament or whatever it might be, you can, pull out your phone and you can find out what's going on, within a minute of what happened. And people now playing in chess tournaments are using new ideas and moves that they saw from a game played that same day in a different time zone just a few hours before them. So information is zipping around, and there's like a certain fantastic element to that. So I'm not just about it. There's like a danger, right? This is something that chess has also taught me, that maybe not everybody gets immediately, but almost everything has a good and a bad side. And that's something you really see in chess. Like, you move your piece to a better square, no matter how much you move it to a better square, there was always something your piece was doing on the previous square that had some value that it's not doing now, almost always. And almost every chess move or exchange or change in the position has its plus and its minus, and we're constantly weighing the benefits of these different things. So for me, all this fantastic information, the ability to sit at home and listen to a world-class musician perform, or go on somebody's back and watch them climb a mountain in real time that you would never have the chance to travel to. It's incredible, all the stuff that you can get. But because there's so much great stuff all the time, people are forgetting about the sort of sitting around, nothing's happening, like the time without greatness, which, although it sounds like it's simply less great, that time also has its value and its place in our lives and how we shepherd and manage the world around us and ourselves. So that's why you'll often see me like being down on things like Blitz, Puzzle Rush, Bullet, faster and faster time controls, shorter and shorter instructional YouTube videos, even like shorts, reels, talk ticks, whatever, all this stuff. I'm sure all that stuff is super cool, and it allows people to discover stuff rapid fire in a way which you couldn't before. You can develop, you can learn, and you've got people who are prodigies at age 8 in fields that before you could never reach that kind of level till 15 or 18 years old, because everything is there. But it's also dangerous, because if it's all so great all the time, then people start to have an aversion to boredom, to waiting, to quiet. And like my kids complain all the time about being bored, all the time. I don't think I've almost ever felt bored in my life. I remember sometimes sitting in class and like I didn't exactly like that class, and there was something else I wanted to do, and I would look at the clock and I'd say, okay, there's 5 minutes left till we get out of class. And I said, oh, but it's better to enjoy the time I have now. I don't want to just lose this time to be 5 minutes older for nothing. And I remember thinking about these kinds of things a little bit. So I think like occasionally I've had a moment as a kid where I was in some kind of classroom and there was some other activity I would have preferred doing, and I sort of thought about, the rolling of time, and do I want to get to my next activity, and is this activity here not great enough? But I usually also was still thinking like, well, I can find what's best about where I am now and make the most of it. But in general, like boredom is almost a foreign concept to me, and my kids are complaining about it all the time, right? And that's because they've seen flashy video games that basically outcompete the natural world. When I show them architecture or countrysides, new vistas, new sounds, new tastes that absolutely gobsmacked me as a child, they're often nonplussed and like, yeah, whatever, Dad, when can I get back on my iPad? And so I hope that without coming across too grumpy and to like an off-putting degree where you discount everything I say, I hope you understand what I'm saying about how there can be too much of something great and too rapid fire, and it's like amazing, but there needs to also be a space for other things. It's kind of like how using a chess engine can help you like grow as a chess player super fast as well, but it can be dangerous as well, because you can start just riding the thing and not reflecting. I think that there are still problems in our lives and in the universe that call for a quiet, long-form reflection to understand and solve. Hey, go back to my first point about having self-analysis and self-understanding, right? And so I would urge everybody to make some effort to recapture what I think of as like that peaceful space where you're just waiting at a bus stop, solving the problems of the universe. And there was a phase in my life where whenever I was stopped or waiting somewhere, I would pull out my phone too and like beep around on it, like, look at the latest chess games from across the world, read some news, read some articles, and there's incredible stuff. But then one day I stopped doing that, and I found that my quiet moments where I'm not doing anything, and I have to fight a little bit to tell myself, don't pick it up, don't go check that thing. When it beeps, I don't need to listen or respond to the beep. I can untrain myself so it beeps and I am impervious to it instead of like a trained response. I found that time of nothingness that I've recaptured is really valuable. So, to get back to the main point here, I think to have a big attention span is of great value. And if you play some slow games, and fine, go ahead, play Blitz, play Bullet, check computers, whatever, if you want to. But my urging for you is not necessarily to completely eliminate everything new and fast, but to keep some space for the quiet and the slow, because that has value too. And I think having a great attention span is going to be valuable. So have some activity in your life where you work on that. And what better activity for that than chess? All right, that's it for my thoughts today. I intend to make a second video in a similar vein where I'm going to talk about the dangers of chess. So today was the rosy side, the greatest things I got from chess, friends, seeing the world, a good attention span, and the ability to analyze myself and make changes that I want in myself. And next time I'll talk to you a little bit about the dark side of chess. Don't worry, overall it's still a good thing. All right, bye, have a great day.